My name is Karthik Venkatasubramanian, and I am the VP for Data and Analytics within Oracle's Construction and Engineering Business Unit. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking about the need for a data strategy, why it's important, and how we are helping our customers accelerate their data journeys. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the why. Why do we need to have a data strategy? Data strategy is about using data with purpose and relevance to drive meaningful change. The change can be anything that you're interested in pursuing, ranging from business growth to improving operational efficiency, or anything in between. Purpose is important because you need to understand what you're trying to do with the data. And relevance is important because you need to know which lever you're going to be able to move because of your data strategy. Perhaps you're going to reduce costs. Maybe you're going to drive revenues, or perhaps it's a mix of both. But the key thing for any good data strategy is that it's got a clearly defined purpose and relevance that is focused on driving business outcomes. The other very common question that we get asked is why now? Well, over the last 12 months, the industry has changed a lot. In fact, digital adoption has perhaps vaulted 5 years forward in the last 12 months alone. There's a lot of digitization that is happening across the industry, where every single business function is getting rapidly digitized. Digitization often leads to datafication, where data is getting created like never before. Systems are getting integrated due to these initiatives, and therefore there is even more data being created. Workloads are moving to the cloud from on-prem systems in what I call as cloudification, and therefore there is ever-increasing access to compute and storage capabilities. There is a lot of smartification that's going on, and things are getting smarter than ever before through IoT sensors, Bluetooth, RFID tags, and therefore that is driving even more data. Lastly, all of this data is leading to democratization of data and analytics because technology is now available to everyone and not restricted only to a few organizations. This combination of digitization and systemization in the cloud is creating data opportunities like never before, as data is the most vital raw ingredient for a good data strategy. On the topic of data strategy, let's look at the two most common types. Based on a Harvard study that was done about 5 years ago, data strategy can be defensive or offensive. Defensive data strategy is about minimizing downside risk. It's about ensuring compliance with regulations like data privacy laws and GDPR, ensuring the integrity of financial reports, and in general, focusing on operational management using data. The other end of the spectrum is to have an offensive data strategy, which is all about using data as a competitive advantage. Often, what this means is that you're using data to create new growth opportunities for your business, driving continuous improvements to predict and prevent issues before they happen, increasing transparency around decision-making, and most importantly, differentiating yourself with your competitors in the marketplace, while building trust internally and externally using the power of data. Every organization needs a healthy mix of both. You need to protect what you have and build on that. The construction and engineering industry has a great opportunity to leverage an offensive data strategy with all the data that is now being created to drive better business outcomes, drive competitive advantage, and most importantly, meaningful change, both within your own organization, but also within the industry as a whole. We think there are 5 key ingredients for a successful data strategy. They are the usual suspects: people, process, and technology. So you want to ask questions like, do you have the right people? Do you have well-defined and standardized processes that scale? And do you have access to the right technology? But most importantly, you have to ask, do you have historical data from your past projects that you can use? But perhaps what is most important than all of these ingredients is the organizational culture and mindset to derive value from data. There is a reason why they say culture eats strategy for breakfast. One way to accelerate how you gain value from data strategy is to partner. Technology partners like Oracle can often ensure we can provide the right people expertise on the technology front, take care of technical data-related processes like integration, ingestion, modeling, report creation, and help with the selection of right technologies to accelerate the data journey. But organizations will still need to bring their data and the mindset to make this successful. We usually see 4 types of organizations in this regard. The first type of organizations are what I call as the fundamentalists. These organizations primarily use data for reports and dashboards. The second type of organization are the traditionalists. They have their reports and dashboards down pat, and therefore the focus is on creation of insights and intelligence. More and more, we find a lot of organizations are in this particular step of the journey. The third type of organizations that we have started seeing are what I call as the adventurists. They are looking at data as a source of competitive differentiation. They're playing with new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and developing a data strategy to make a big difference to how they run their business today. The last set of organizations are what I call as the futurists. Now, it's really hard to find organizations in this space within the construction and engineering space. These are organizations that are already using data for literally everything within their organizations and are driving continuous improvement using data. You might have picked up a pattern here. See, as you focus on reports and dashboards and insights and intelligence, you're talking about digitization. These are the organizations that are focusing on moving from manual paper-based processes to bits and bytes. After you've done that, the next step of the process is digitalization, where you're digitizing entire workflows end to end. And finally, when you've digitized and digitalized, that's when you talk about digital transformation of the entire business. We recently ran a survey with IDC earlier this year, and our findings confirmed what we just discussed. Majority of the organizations are focusing on bringing data together for reports and dashboards. Some have moved to integrating data sources for better insights and intelligence. And the smaller set are playing with IoT, NDBIM, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. But what is clear to us is, based on the research, data strategy is no longer an afterthought, and a lot of organizations are actively crafting or executing one. But sometimes when you talk about data strategy, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it can feel too futuristic. It's really important to realize that construction is one of the oldest industries in the world, and the goals have perhaps been the same for almost 2,000 years. In fact, Vitruvius, who was considered the chief engineer in Julius Caesar's time, wrote a 10-book treatise on construction practices that is probably just as relevant today as it was back then. Owners and project delivery teams are still trying to accelerate project delivery, improve project margins, exceed customer expectations, create safer job sites, and minimize project risks. This has remained consistent throughout the years, and I think will remain a key focus and a key goal for the industry for the foreseeable future. What we are really talking about here is making a tangible impact to these desired outcomes using data that we have never had access to before. And what this means is that we can start to look beyond the rearview mirror to drive outcomes forward. Let me explain. You see, for years, the industry has relied on lag indicators. Lag indicators like this. I've got 40 of them here, but there's hundreds more. I'm sure you're looking at this and saying, hey, that's something we measure and use today. That is totally fine. But the problem with these metrics is that they are lag indicators, meaning they are reflective of something that has already happened. Whereas what we're trying to do is get ahead of the curve. We're trying to protect and improve project margins. We want to deliver ahead of our schedule. and hand over before our own time. We want to exceed our customers' expectations of quality. We want to have zero incidents and near misses, and we don't want to have any unexpected surprises. Therefore, what we're really talking about here is that need to cross the analytics chasm and move from lag indicators to lead indicators, where we're looking at the possibility of a predicted delay or a cost overrun, where we are able to anticipate change requests and variations and minimize the risk of rework. We want to preempt litigations and disputes, prevent health and safety incidents, and resolve quality issues proactively while predicting supply chain performance. These are just a very small subset of examples of lead indicators that we are focusing on, where we are talking about what might happen in the future, and therefore taking proactive action to help get ahead of the curve. When done right, they help drive huge business improvements, the kind that we were talking about when describing an offensive data strategy. It's these improvements that the adventurous and the futurists are seeking. When predicting and preventing issues from happening across the metrics that we care about, time, cost, quality, safety, risk, and scope, we can drive operational leverage. Consider the possibility of improving capital costs by 10%, turnover and profits by 5%, or maybe you can reduce construction time by 10%, reduce defects, incidents, and near misses by a set basis point, all the while driving operational efficiencies. What we're really talking about is making these meaningful differences through predictability, using all of the data and using predictive analytics as lead indicators. But before we go any further, let's talk about the business of predictability. According to the CII, predictability enables project teams to address project performance proactively, thus increasing the value to the organization. So once again, it's about using lead indicators and driving organizational value. There are three types of prediction that are often used interchangeably and sometimes cause confusion. First is a formulaic approach, which uses a predetermined formula to make forecasts. This is something that you would have probably seen used when you have measures that forecast something, like a forecast to complete variable. The second approach is what I call as simulation. Simulations often involve manual inputs that are used as parameters to run several permutation combinations of different possible outcomes. The most common simulation that you have probably seen is the Monte Carlo simulation. The third approach is algorithmic, where you're using machine learning to learn from historical data and make predictions about possible outcomes. A lot of what we're talking about here is algorithmic. The third type, which uses all of your historical data and machine learning to try and make predictions. While AI and machine learning might seem too futuristic, it really isn't as distant as they sound. You probably have a bit of it in your pocket, on your desk, in your cars, and in your television. Data and machine learning is already used in so much of our day-to-day lives. When we're watching movies and when we see recommendation, there's machine learning at play there. Or similarly, when we see shopping recommendations based on our purchasing pattern. When we see predictive text, or when we ask Siri, Alexa, or Google, or when our GPS helps us to get from point A to point B, there's a fair bit of machine learning in all of these technologies. There's machine learning and AI deeply interwoven with how we live today, to the point that we don't think much about it at all because we've just accepted them into our day-to-day lives. The question really is, can we now accept them in the way we work and deliver capital projects? The them is the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, the algorithmic approach to project delivery. And borrowing from the field of sports, we can easily see why this might be a great idea. Most people are aware of Moneyball, which actually first came into popular culture almost 19 years ago. People have since seen the movie, read the book, or experienced the game where Billy Beane used data and a technique called as sabermetrics to change the fate of Oakland Athletics in baseball. Today, Oracle partners with English Premier League where they're using machine learning models to generate immediate results based on live data streams. We partner with F1 Racing to leverage machine learning and data analytics, and we work with SailGP to use machine learning to detect sophisticated correlation patterns. So much machine learning and AI has been embraced in sports, and that brings us to the one question that I think is the elephant in the room. What about us as an industry? This quote from the AIA chair in 2018 perhaps summarizes the risk and the opportunity the best. We have to find a way to get ahead of the revolution before we get flattened by it. And it is exactly for this reason that Oracle Construction and Engineering released our Construction Intelligence Cloud product earlier this year in March. Oracle CIC Advisor is about providing those lead indicators and predictive analytics that we just spoke about to get ahead of the curve, to take preemptive action about what might happen and provide you with an opportunity to influence the project outcomes before it's too late. It's about giving you that competitive edge that we spoke about just before and be part of your offensive data strategy. So how does this work? Well, it's a simple three-step process, and let me walk you through our approach. Step one, it starts with the data. Our aim is to bring together all the data that we have across all of our products like P6, Primavera Cloud, Aquenix, Textura, and Unifier. Data points around schedule, budget, risk, quality, safety, delivery, and much, much more. It's integrated out of the box in the cloud in a separate tenant built for each customer separately so that you don't have to worry about data integration. So step one is really about bringing the data together. Step two is all about using machine learning to find patterns in historical data that can be applied on current projects. We look for patterns on what activities were delivered on time or have historically been delayed. We look for anomalies in the current data using historical performance measures, analyze sentiments to see early signs of trouble, and use the integrated connected data set to make sure everything adds up. Step three is about providing the insights and intelligence out of the box. We use the common data environment, which has all the data to provide the out-of-the-box predictive insights around risk, safety, quality, disputes. These lead indicators use machine learning that trains off your data and continuously improve as new data is created. You can see the accuracy of the predictions in measures that is typically used in the world of data science. Measures like accuracy and precision so that you can have confidence in what you're seeing and also can see how the quality of predictions improve over time as the quality of your data gets better. The best analogy is that it's like a risk radar that is continuously monitoring the project landscape and looking at all the data and information created for early warnings of issues to surface insights for proactive action. It's looking for planning errors, risk of rework, potential on-site incidents, schedule delays, risk of running into disputes and litigations, and much, much more. Let me show you what actually happens under the hood. A lot of people have heard about Viziwig, which basically refers to what you see is what you get. I would like you to consider Vizdimai, which is my abbreviation for what you don't see might hurt you. Let me explain why. Here's a word cloud of data and information that is typically exchanged on large and small capital projects. When you look at this, you look at things that you probably expect to see. But what you perhaps don't see in the sea of green are the little things in red. If I were to blow that up, you will find that amongst all that chatter, amongst all that noise, there were some early signals of trouble. People were talking about breach, termination, court, prosecution, disputes. What we're trying to do is pick up on these cues early on in the piece and surface them up so that you can take proactive action. Behind the scenes, we use natural language processing, a machine learning technique that is used to process and understand human language. But what's really important here is the ability to try and pick up the signal from the noise and surface that up by way of predictive analytics to allow you to take proactive action. And here's a screen that will allow you to do just that. It's showing the areas where it's picked up early signs of disputes and litigations. You can see the sentiment used in the correspondence. It is using all sources of unstructured data, like text that it has access to within your platform. And it also seeks your feedback. Maybe it got the prediction wrong, and you can correct it. And it learns from that interaction. And that is the power of using tools like this, as it's just not about getting it right the first time, but improving over time. It's about driving consistency of your internal business processes, improving data quality, and changing the culture to help use these kinds of technologies to drive better business outcomes. And perhaps the one outcome that we hear the most is to try and prevent schedule delays. To get to that, we need to talk about the planning fallacy. The planning fallacy describes our tendency to underestimate the amount of time it will take to complete a task. A cognitive bias that the Nobel Award-winning author Daniel Kahneman first explored in 1979. And I think most people will agree that it intuitively makes sense because a plan on paper is quite different to reality. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to get the project teams to think about delays as soon as the first schedule is created. Learn from the past schedules as they hold the cues to what might go wrong, especially when certain activities have historically been an issue. We want to make sure the schedules are robust and don't have technical and logical errors, optimize plans based on forecasts and predictions, and continuously monitor the downstream impact of things getting delayed. So how does this all come together? Let's see. This screen from Oracle Construction Intelligence Cloud shows that there is a 51% probability that this project will be delayed by 20 days. You can quickly see the factors that have contributed to the prediction and the specific activities that might need to be reviewed. The project can be at any stage, but you will still see these types of predictions that will change based on what data it has access to. It is specifically trained on your project so that it can detect patterns based on how you run your project and how your business runs capital delivery. A lot of it also boils down to the fact that most things are interconnected and very rarely do things happen in isolation. So we're taking a network approach to visualization. What does that mean? Let me show you. Here's a project schedule, but instead of the usual Gantt chart, it is showing the activities and their relationships as a network of interrelated activities. The idea is you can quickly look at activities that are predicted to be delayed so you can gauge the downstream impact. Perhaps the concrete pour isn't going to happen on Monday, and therefore you need to reschedule all the other trades. Or you need to add more subs to help with accelerating the schedule and are wondering who are the best performing subs. And that is where being able to visualize your entire project supply chain might come in very handy, where you can see who you're working well with, where is information stuck, and therefore getting delayed. Who are the most critical organizations in your supply chain? Again, the idea is to understand the interrelationships between things rather than view things in isolation to understand knock-on impact when things go wrong. In summary, data intelligence solutions like Construction Intelligence Cloud is about putting your data to work to give you the edge. The data is still yours. You control how you use it. We just help bring it to life. In that process, we're focused on democratizing the value of data. We have made sure that it is affordable. We often say it costs less than half a data scientist. Therefore, it is now accessible to everyone rather than just big organizations that can afford to invest in large-scale data infrastructure. We have and will continue to work with our users globally to make sure that we are demystifying AI and making it simple to understand and use. No PhDs required. We are obsessed about time to value. We want your first set of predictions to be available in 2 to 3 weeks. The solutions that we're building are focused on the industry and the specific problems that we know the industry faces. We have ex-schedulers, project managers who have lived through the issues and therefore understand their pain points. We are ensuring there is a degree of customizability where the algorithms are training off your data and therefore learns on how you run your projects. There is no one size fits all here because this is about driving competitive advantage that is unique to you. And lastly, it's about improving and building trust. Explainable AI is the holy grail that a lot of people are trying to solve. We're continuously striving to explain the why behind the predictions to ensure that it's easy to understand the rationale behind the predictions. While a lot of this is apparent, as it's easy to see this on the screen, there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that actually enable this magic to happen. The backend infrastructure required for this automatically provisioned in Oracle Cloud infrastructure with world-class security and role-based access control that is inherent from the underlying application. The data is integrated out of the box, and machine learning data pipelines are all built ready for you to use. A lot of the time, significant effort is spent on building this infrastructure, and we've made sure that this is abstracted behind the scenes, and it just works as you look and focus on the predictions that you need to worry about when we're talking about predictive analytics. Like we discussed at the start, a large part of this is about embracing the data mindset and shifting the culture. It's an exercise in change. And we get this just as anyone else. That is us from 1997. And today we're talking about cloud, AI, and machine learning. Therefore, one of the most common things that we get asked is, what does that journey look like? And what the pit stops are in that process. The first step is almost always a focus on what is known as descriptive analytics. It's about the here and now. It's about focusing on what's happening now and usually delivered through reports and dashboards. But very soon, the focus shifts to diagnostic analytics, where project teams and senior leaders start to ask why. Why did that happen? And usually this is about root cause analysis, ad hoc analysis that is undertaken to unpack what has happened, as usually with time, these types of ad hoc analysis is operationalized. A lot of this uses structured data that is stored in nicely structured rows and columns. What really starts to change the game is the next step of the focus, where we look at reflective analytics. Reflective analytics is where we look at the past to understand if there is a recurring pattern. We create baselines and benchmarks to compare current projects against historical data. But where all of this gets really interesting is when we start to drive predictive analytics. This is what we are focused on today, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to drive competitive advantage. This is where you use unstructured data like text, images, videos, and voice. And lastly, it's about getting prescriptive, where you can get recommendations based on what is likely to happen. You have optimization suggestions that you can use and are always thinking about options and levers that you have based on the likelihood of different things that might happen. And different organization types that we discussed at the start usually are in various stages of this journey. The two big steps are when organizations have to jump from using data to produce reports and dashboards to using data to get predicted. In general, the journey is more important than the destination, as a shift will happen progressively as the organizations see more and more value through the use of data and analytics. A large part of this is recognizing the opportunity and the challenge. First, to reiterate, think about your data strategy and ask yourself, is it offensive and does it drive competitive advantage? It absolutely can when done right. Secondly, use predictive analytics as lead indicators to drive better business growth. And that is already happening. One simple Google search will show you case studies where AI and ML are being used to improve safety, reduce risk, mitigate delays, manage costs, and continuously monitor project data for issues to take proactive action. Thirdly, partnering will and can accelerate the data journey because it's affordable, scalable, focused, and yet customizable to the way you run your organization, and therefore can capitalize what might be unique to you. Lastly, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Digitization is driving rapid datafication, and that is fueling the change required for the next wave that many are terming as Industry 5.0. We're seeing a lot of organizations prepare for this change, readying themselves to take advantage of this change. Here's a quote from Mace, a very large contractor in Europe, that perhaps summarizes this the best. We are a sustainability and data company. We just happen to do great buildings. More and more CEOs, CIOs, CDOs are talking to us about this data opportunity. And that resonates with us very well because at Oracle, our mission is to help people see data in new ways, discover insights, and unlock endless possibilities. Hopefully, we've been able to show you some of that today. Thank you so much for joining me in this session today, and please make sure you attend the other power sessions. Thank you.